Live right about now. Hello, ladies and gentlemen. This is Mark Tech. A very big welcome to anybody who's joining me at this very peculiar time that I've started this stream. I apologize, I've had a lot up my sleeve and we were celebrating my niece's birthday today. So, as I tend to say, it was a long day, but today was a really, really long one. So, for me, it's now midnight. Knowing that most of my viewership is in the US, I do hope that it's a little bit of a help. I now see that my stream is working. You should be seeing my cat next to me. I will not be doing an extra window for her today because she's nice enough to just be there. Yeah, so why am I doing a stream about cables? Because we've already covered the stuff that I think is most important to most people, which is primarily that the iPhone 15 across the regular 15, the 15 Plus, the 15 Pro, and the 15 Pro Max will be transitioning to USB-C. Now, a small break. Cheers to everyone. Oh, and by the way, I have a new trick up my sleeve, which is... So I will be muting myself now whenever I drink and eat. Thank you to a viewer who posted that comment to remind me that some people react very intensively to like noises of like chewing and drinking. So I will be holding it to a minimum, relatively. I obviously cannot guarantee. Now, going back to cables and just in general, what we are expecting to see with the new iPhones is, of course, we are transitioning to USB-C. However, as I've also outlined in my last few videos, USB-C is not always the same. In fact, it's one of the most confusing standards ever created, as by itself it mandates very, very little. USB-C, even by itself, does not mandate higher speeds either in data transfer or in charging versus USB-A cables. It just so happens that usually we do expect that because USB-C is associated more broadly with newer devices. However, there are plenty of cheaper Android devices that only support 480 megabits per second of data transfer speeds through USB-C. We now have the 10th gen iPad, which has USB-C, which is also limited to those USB 2.0 speeds. And in contrast, Lightning, which we usually associate with much slower speeds, Lightning in the year 2015, when Apple launched the original iPad Pro, the gigantic 12.9-inch version, which I absolutely adored, that one was capable of 5 gigabits per second. So this idea that USB-C is inherently superior primarily comes with us associating it with high transfer speeds, high charging speeds on larger, more expensive and more modern devices. MacBooks are a very good example where we have had USB-C on the original 12-inch MacBook, but with 5 gigabits per second, and then we transitioned to the era of Thunderbolt. 20, 40 gigabits per second, and potentially Thunderbolt 5 going all the way up to 120 gigabits per second plus an extra 40, so 80 up, 80 down, or even 120 up, 40 down. That's crazy, and Lightning will never be updated to ever support such speeds, even if theoretically it could do so. So we were all looking forward to USB-C on iPhones having that kind of flair that we now associate with modern USB-C. And we are now getting a ton of rumors about the changes for included cables with the iPhone. Now, we all know that iPhones don't ship with chargers anymore, or headphones for that matter, unless you live in some very, very limited areas that mandate those kind of accessories to still be shipped with a smartphone. For example, to like reduce the amount of like radiation that your head experiences through Bluetooth headphones, some areas mandate that you still have like headphones in the box. Okay, it is what it is. So, however, we are still getting cables in the box, with the idea being that chargers are more likely to outlive the lifespan of your typical phone, while a cable most likely isn't. So, while not every new iPhone needs a new charger, it is very likely that every new iPhone or every new phone shipped can benefit from a new cable. This is, for example, why Apple treats iPads differently than iPhones, because while an iPad still might benefit from an older charger in general, it is very likely that if you get a new iPad, maybe you don't have the appropriate charger for it, maybe it's your very first tablet, maybe it's a tablet you buy for your kids, and you just want that extra accessory. So this is why Apple still keeps giving you chargers in the box, while with the iPhone they don't, and they know that they won't get enough backlash, because fundamentally most people don't really care anymore. They know what they need to have, and they already have it most likely, especially in developed countries. So now you see something weird on my screen, which is that I'm not starting by actually talking about cables, even though my intro kind of did that. But the point here is those cables will have a very peculiar thing about them, which is both very un-Apple-like, given how much they focused on like traditionally white accessories, but it also seems like the ultimate Apple move to attract people to a new generation of charging, data transfers, regardless of how much they've pushed like wireless over the last couple of years. So the first thing we need to talk about are the new iPhone colors. Now, the new colors for the regular iPhone 15 will probably be somewhat similar to the iPhone 14. I have not seen very concrete rumors about changes from blue, red, yellow, all the black and silver traditional color ones. There's always some changing, right? Sometimes we get like green in the lineup, pink, whatever, right? It varies, but fundamentally the iPhone, the non-Pro iPhones are very colorful, very vibrant. The Pros are less so. Currently the lineup consists of space black, silver, gold, and purple, and in previous years we had colors like Sierra blue, Pacific blue, and more like that. Now this year we are switching to titanium, and titanium has its own like somewhat specific look. It looks pretty similar actually to anodized aluminum, but you definitely know the difference. Titanium, I don't know how well Apple will manage to color it, basically, to paint it, to anodize it, however they choose to go about it. But one of those colors will definitely be a native titanium look, similar to what we are used to on the Apple Watch Ultra, and that color will be called Titan Gray. And Titan Gray will not only consist of the natural titanium look on the chassis, but also of a similar matched matte gray on the back of frosted glass. And that is just one of the colors, and I think it's going to be a very interesting one. Here are like some mock-ups of what those colors could look like. And the other colors are supposedly going to be some version of black, probably. We have no idea whether it would be like a full-on space blackish, which again we did have in the past, an Apple Watch like that. Silver is not explicitly confirmed by rumors, but it seems likely, even though of course silver would just be like yet another gray color, so that could clash potentially in the lineup. And the other one will be a blue color. Now we don't know which one it exactly will be. It's supposedly a darker shade of blue, and that darker shade of blue is kind of the replacement for the long time rumor that the Pro iPhones would be getting a red color version. So like a really dark, potentially product red. Seems like the red isn't happening, and seems like those are the 3 to 4 colors that we are getting. And with that, we are also getting, supposedly, and this is how I'm getting back to cables, which is that the cables will supposedly be color matched. I have to remember where I put it. Here, we are getting a lot of reports from Majin Buu, who is a Twitter leaker about Apple. And by the way, Origin Unknown, a very, very warm welcome to the stream. I apologize so much for the crazy time zone. I know that my videos are getting a lot of video on demand views. Like my last iPhone video, like completely tanked the first day and then got like 100 200 extra views the next day. So I feel comfortable just putting out videos like this. However, I'm very, very grateful to anybody who like joins live streams, and I apologize whenever I put them out at like very uncomfortable times for you. Also, I'm doing this stream not knowing if the WAN show is happening. So if I'm done in like an hour and I see that the WAN show is happening at 2 at 2 a.m. of my time, I will probably consider reacting to that. I'm really not sure. But yeah, Origin, very glad you're here. You have already joined me during my PlayStation stream, so a very, very welcome. Going back to USB-C and cables that are supposedly coming with, which is, now we've discussed the new colors we're getting. And with the understanding that we're getting new colors, we should also understand that we are getting now color matched cables in the box with the new iPhones. We see here I cannot fully define that color. Is that like a salmon tone a little bit? I am a tiny bit colorblind, especially like the low res image in this, and the worse like the color gamut of an image. So I apologize. Obviously, this is blue, this is black. I kind of get that, but it should also be noted. Some people have asked me why the ends with the USB-C ports are white. It seems to be a new direction that Apple is going with, which is that the USB-C is matching the color of the charger, and Apple's chargers are all white. So this is how it basically plugs in and matches that color. With black, obviously, it would contrast probably too much to have a white port end and then a black cable, but I assume all the colorful ones will have a white end. So that's kind of a little bit confusing, probably, because people would expect it to just be one continuous color, but I think Apple has its own unique look strategy here, which is kind of what Apple is known for. Yeah, I hope my trick with the microphone works with the quick mute and stuff like that, so you don't hear me drinking or chewing or anything like that. So this is what we got, right? And originally that was a very interesting rumor, because one thing about those cables is that those aren't just colorful and apparently color matched to the iPhone they're shipping with, but they're also braided. And getting braided cables from Apple out of the box is something that you get with the freaking Mac Pro or the Pro Display XDR, devices in the thousands of dollars of cost, which, sure, the new iPhone will be expensive, but not that expensive. So it's an interesting value add-on, and this is why my video is titled "Is Apple ripping off customers?" And in comparison to what we currently have, Definitely not, right? I mean, it's such an obvious improvement. You get like a more playful look. For one, the other point, you also get USB-C, which I would consider just a more valuable cable to have nowadays than Lightning. And now you got braided, which I think I've said that in like when I covered this originally, but I consider Apple's braided cables the absolute best. Like the MagSafe cable that I have with my MacBook Pro, and I have a ton of braided cables. I have experienced like those from basically every major brand. I have for myself purchased a ton of specifically Anchor cables. The way Apple does braiding on like their cables is absolutely insane. It feels really good. It feels very premium, and it feels very, very durable. However, obviously, braiding is not all here. And now we have to consider, well, what are those kinds of cables that we're getting, right? They're obviously Type C to Type C, which they should be right now. And we have discussed, for example, the potential data throughput speeds and charging speeds of the new iPhone. Now, the charging speeds are pretty similar to what we currently have. Supposedly, we're getting a nice increase from 27 watts to 35 watts on the largest model, and then probably smaller models than non-Pro models will have slightly slower speeds, but I assume they would still scale up a little bit from what we had before. So it's definitely a nice improvement percentage wise, but you also have to consider that the new iPhones are likely to have larger batteries, which also means that they would require faster charging to reach the same charge percentage. Origin, you were saying that for what you, it's like USB 2.0 on the premium phone with a price hike is a bit scummy. Well, for one, not all iPhones are getting a price hike, right? So those cables will also be shipping with the new iPhone 15, which the new iPhone 15 is not getting a price increase like the Pro. Also, the Pro is getting a price increase for all kinds of different reasons beyond cables. And let's just get back to what we also are seeing. Okay, here, for one, we are having the rumor of much faster data throughput speeds. We don't know exactly what we're getting, but we are speculating that we are probably going to see USB 2.0 speeds on the base iPhones and some kind of much faster throughput on the Pros. Now, if that is full on Thunderbolt, which currently would be 40 gigabits per second, that's already insane. But even if it's more like USB 3.2 Gen 2 by 2 or something, I don't know. I think that's actually the name, isn't it? It could be still like 20 gigabits per second. Or it could be like USB 4, but like not the full speed version of USB 4. Definitely not USB 4 version 2.0, which is the version that is supposed to match the capabilities of Thunderbolt 5, which, as I've outlined, would be 120 gigabits up, 40 gigabits down. So that's one thing, right? So this is context, which is on the current iPhones, we're getting USB 2 cables, which is 480 megabits per second, because the phones only support 480 megabits per second. The regular iPhone 15 will also be USB 2.0 speeds, 480 megabits per second, so that's the kind of cable it needs. Or it kind of warrants to have, basically. But as Origin outlined, on a more premium device with much faster potential data throughput speeds, what kind of cable are we getting? Now, it should be noted that we don't fully know which cables are currently being analyzed, right? Because we are getting color matched cables right? That's very important. But nothing that I have currently seen suggested we have necessarily seen the cables that are shipping with the Pro iPhones. Those could still be cables intended for the iPhone 15 and 15 Plus. However, for the sake of the conversation, because this is where we would be getting to Apple ripping people off, is potentially that all cables shipping with the new iPhones would still be USB 2.0. So this is still Majin Buu, so he's doing a lot of work here. For one, what is he confirming? Well, it is USB-C with 16 pins. No, I don't want to see it on Twitter. What? Like, I didn't even click on it. I right-clicked on it. I have no idea why this happened. So it is USB-C to Type-C. It's 16 pins. One thing that I should also say, it's a 1.6 meter braided cable. 1.6 meters is 60% longer than the current cables. So this is where my counter argument will come into play, that if Apple is ripping us off, they have definitely been ripping us off worse currently and in the past than they will be doing so now, because especially in the non-pros, which are not getting a price increase of any kind, to get now a cable that is significantly longer, braided, more usable in the sense that it's USB-C, like, oh, okay, I cannot even do kind of text selecting without invoking Twitter? That's crazy. It's thicker and more resistant, which would go into it being also braided. It supports 20 watts by 3 amps. I have no idea why I see some people reporting that it's a 20 watt cable. For one, very few USB cables on the market are that low charging speed. You would need to have a millimeter of you would have to have the thinnest copper going through that you have ever seen for it to only support those kinds of speed. 20 volts by 3 amps is 60 watts. I don't know why I should be saying that. I think anybody who is above the age of 12 probably should know that. But it's USB 2.0, which is interesting. Now, he is saying it's power delivery 3.0, which anybody who knows Apple does already have 3.1 compliant technology, which is intended for the MacBooks, which obviously need 140 watts. You don't need that with the iPhones, and it's perfectly fine if the iPhones don't ship with that kind of stuff. It's not power delivery 3.0 is not necessarily a much older and worse standard than 3.1. It's just what you need for a lower charge depending device. But he's saying it's USB 2.0, and interestingly, he's pointing out, by the way, I have heard people refer to Majin Buu as he, him. This is why I'm saying he. If somebody knows that this individual goes by other gender pronouns or is just another I don't know, right? It's very likely that it's a he, him, by all accounts from what I've heard, but it could be a she, it could be somebody going by they, them, so I'm just going with what I've heard. Sorry, Majin Buu, if I mischaracterized your gender identity. But interestingly, he is saying it's not MFI. So MFI is the made for iPhone standard, which regulates how accessories are basically read by the iPhone or by the iPad. Less so on the iPad. Of course, the iPad is USB-C, but of course, historically there were iPads with Lightning. So the interesting thing here is that we have heard that there would be some kind of MFI chips inside new cables that would limit how fast the phone could charge and or how fast it could transfer data. So this does not seem to be present on the included cables with the new iPhone. Origin. I think the length increase in color coding is going to be a selling point to get people to buy the power adapters on release. Do you think that they will be getting like color matched power adapters as well? Because Apple is kind of notorious to be really weird with what they give new colors to. Like you have to consider, like when the new MacBooks shipped, like they didn't right away have like fully color matched MagSafe cables. Then eventually they changed their minds and now we have like color matched MagSafe. AirPods are notorious for, just like earpods before that, for just being like that glossy plastic white. However, AirPods Max for some reason have this wide array of colors. So Apple shipping colorful cables will not necessarily translate to Apple getting away from like their and I do have one here that I'm currently not using, like their like just white glossy plastic charging or just accessory aesthetic, I would say. I think it's very iconic for Apple. I don't think that it provides any inherent value to me that it's only white. I do like black stuff primarily more so, but yeah, just because I do believe that Apple will want people to buy shit also based on colors and the fact that this is just a more valuable cable. However, overall, I do also understand that Apple does try to create some kind of value add-ons in the box. They've always tried to do so historically. Like the original iPhone shipped with like a freaking charging stand and stuff like that. Obviously, over time, iPhones became popular enough by themselves, so they had to put less and less in the box. And for environmental reasons, which I know is for some reason a hot take, I actually do like it when companies ship less stuff in the box. Like here, this is like a charger that like my mom's husband has. It's a 35-watt charger. Obviously not an advertisement. It's a dual Type-C charging. My MacBook is currently charging with my 100-watt charger. I have I've owned even way more Anchor chargers that I ended up giving away. A lot of people just needed chargers, my friends and my close friends and some family members. So now I have a few less less chargers. So yeah, I think the charging situation it's always a little overblown when people are saying, oh, why is Apple not including this, or why is Apple not offering this color? It has a lot to do with like consumerism, which is we always want more for our money, which is like somewhat smart consumer behavior. But fundamentally, I do encourage people to think that you are paying for the smartphone, and even like the the price increase that we're getting right now. Sure, it's a cost increase and it would be nice to get more stuff, but a longer braided cable is already more. Like the counter argument that we are now seeing from people is because we have like all those rumors about the iPhone's capability, what it's shipping with, and what it supports. I think I've closed it, right? And on accident, right? Yeah, so that the iPhone could support potentially Thunderbolt or just much faster USB, which will also go hand in hand with Apple selling you something new, which is a Thunderbolt cable primarily aimed at the iPhone market. Now, we already have Apple selling Thunderbolt cables. They are pretty expensive, though they are supposedly really, really good. they're nice quality braided, they're pretty thick and reliable. The test from what I've seen is them getting pretty much exactly the speeds that you want them to have. Their super long cables are meant for like their active cables, which anybody knows, the longer a cable gets, the signal inside the cable degrades, so you need like repeater chips inside to keep the signal steady, which increases the cost of a cable. Which yes, Apple's cables are still more expensive than alternatives, but they're not apparently as overpriced as some in the consumer space seem to believe. Origin, is a longer braided cable really worth more over a full charger? No, by no means. That is not what I'm saying. I am saying that you don't need a new charger. This is my point. Like, I know it's not of a super popular opinion, but I think we all have more than enough, by this point, pretty useless plastic in our homes that are doing the exact same stuff. And whenever people upgrade from like a 20-watt charger to 30-watt charger because, oh my god, my phone now supports 27 watts, I sort of understand the mentality of trying to get the most out of what you have. And if you already have, let's say, like a 100-watt MacBook charger, you still can achieve those results. But I think that this idea that I need, like, by default the fastest cable that I can get, I need by default the fastest charger that I can get, I think that's a highly consumerist, like ultra capitalist thing to believe, which is, yes, we all try to have like the best value from our purchases. That I'm absolutely not I'm absolutely not denying that Apple is a little bit like nickel and diming us. What I am saying that, by the way, this, I know this sounds like an Apple defense. I have always been at the forefront when Samsung started like getting rid of cables and like chargers and other accessories. I have applauded Samsung for this. Like, it's no joke. I have said time and time again, I am fine with just getting a freaking smartphone if it helps keeps prices down, if it helps keeps emissions down while the phone is transported all over the world. I have a metric ton of cables of between Lightning and USB-C. I have all kinds of chargers, and I am not alone. Like, sure, I might be on the more extreme end, but I know plenty of people who are not as hardcore into technology who have like 60 or 70% as many accessories as I do. Like, I got like extra USB-C cables with like the stand for the iPhone for like stable camera capture. It's not a tripod, but it's something similar, right? I have like USB-C cables that were meant for like my PlayStation accessories. I got like USB-C cables with like every purchase of every recent device. Like, I got my mom USB-C headphones. That's another USB-C cable that is only like associated with one accessory, but she also already had other USB-C cables, so that's another extra cable. And all those cables, by the way, are almost exclusively USB 2.0. So the idea that Apple is doing something very specifically scummy by shipping you USB 2.0 cables, it's not very true. It is pretty much industry standard. I know that some Android tablets, some Android phones come with cables that support faster throughput speeds, but they're not. It's by no means a universal standard. Most cables that come in the box are matched for the charging speed of a phone, not necessarily the data transfer speed. And on the laptop market, you can completely forget it. A ton of laptops come like with barrel chargers, so forget getting any kind of Type-C cables with those. And a lot of the thin lights that charge exclusively over Type-C, like, definitely don't have like Thunderbolt or USB 4.0 cables inside. So So I am not excusing what Apple is doing, but I am contextualizing it in the sense, for one, it's pretty much industry standard what they're doing. Second, they're doing already more than they have been doing historically. And third, whenever people just try to bring up points like, the charger, I try to bring up counterpoints, because I have been a big advocate of getting rid of as much unnecessary bullshit. Sure, an extra charger is always nice, but I don't need necessarily an extra Apple charger. If I want to support a company with great chargers, I will get like a charger that has like 3 USB-C ports, that supports like 240 watts, that is gallium nitride, that might be a very specific color that I want to get. Maybe a charger that also happens to be like a battery inside. Maybe a charger that offers ports and at the same time has like a charging pack for the Apple Watch already included. So you see what I mean? It's like, and at that point, this is a conscious purchase that I make. It's my money. It's my expectations, and it's the requirement of this specific company to give me a charger or a battery accessory that I really want to have. And the same thing goes for cables. Now, I will say that I don't like the cable being USB 2. I would have liked the cable to be USB 3 at the very least, like 5 gigabits per second. I think for slightly faster transfer speeds would have gone a long way to alleviate some backlash that we're currently seeing. But the fact that I'm seeing people asking for Thunderbolt like included in the box, which given that Thunderbolt cables are also much thicker, so 1.6 meter cable that's also much thicker, like could potentially like also like force Apple to make the box even larger and stuff like that. Obviously that's not like an impossible task for them to achieve, but this is where I think it gets out of hand, because with USB 3, you would still be having essentially the same kind of thickness. It wouldn't add a lot to the cost for Apple, and it would just make the out-of-the-box experience a lot better. However, I should also say, beyond just data throughput, in the sense of sorry, I thought there was a mistake on like my image. Beyond the data throughput speeds, every kind of accessory and every kind of other usage that I have for my iPhone with my Mac is completely fine with USB 2.0. Like mice, no, I think it's mouses, right? I think it's not the same plural as the animal. It doesn't matter. A mouse does not need USB 3.0. A microphone does not need USB 3.0 speeds, and even my iPhone, which is currently capturing my image live and translating and moving it to the iPhone, to the MacBook and OBS, is doing it over USB 2.0, and it's perfectly fine. Right? So again, it's all contextual, which is, of course, we all would like Thunderbolt cables included, but there needs to be some kind of understanding of how big companies actually work. As long as this does not get people to upgrade to a new iPhone, this will not be standard in the box. And this will not get people to upgrade to a new iPhone, because people who buy a new iPhone and really need and want a Thunderbolt cable are either already have a Thunderbolt cable, or they will just buy one. So, and at that point, Apple just double dips, and they really like double dipping, as every company does. Origin. So eventually, would removing the cable in the box be accepted? 100%. This is a very, very unpopular take of mine. I absolutely believe that once iPhones go USB-C for like 3 or 4 years, afterwards, let's say like the iPhone 20, to me it would be perfectly fine for Apple to remove USB-C cables completely, or any kind of cables. I think it changes a little when we start talking about bigger devices, because it's much less likely that somebody has a charger or a cable capable of certain demands that the device has, right? Because my MacBook supports 100 watts. The 16-inch version supports 140 watts. It's much less likely that somebody has a 100-watt charger, much less a 140-watt one. And while some might say, well, it could still charge somewhat fine with like a 60-watt charger, the point would also still be, well, if I'm actually using my iPhone to my MacBook to the max, like let's say I'm running a demanding emulator at full speed, and I have the fans running at full speed, I have the screen at full brightness, I could actually need the full 100 watts, the full 140 watts to charge it fast enough so it doesn't lose battery while doing this shit, even though it's connected to the wall. On the iPhone, it's much less likely. You are probably never going to get much faster power usage on the phone than like 10 watts. You would have like a 5 watt, 6 watt, 7 or even 8 watt power usage from the chip, then a watt or maybe 2 from an ultra high brightness screen, and maybe in a specific scenarios like capturing at full brightness, like potentially at some point an 8K 60 FPS image from the camera, it could get maybe like the phone to like 12 watts of like continuous power usage. That's a lot though. That would very likely overheat your phone, and you definitely have easy access to chargers of like 12 watts, 15 watts, 20 watts, and stuff like that. I'm sorry, I forgot that I muted myself. So your origin, yeah, I absolutely believe that it would be at some point. I don't think it would be perfectly fine right now, even though I would support it, because I would even without the box. Like I understand that we some in the Apple community have like the Steve Jobs mentality towards some stuff. Oh, they want like pretty packaging, but I'm mostly a minimalist. Apple could ship me the iPhone in like a cardboard box that is only designed to like really protect it well, and like if they like advertise this like we are not using color, we're not using paint on the freaking box, we're not using any extra plastic for the cables or chargers or anything else, I'm completely fine with that. The only negative aspect of this is first time buyers who really don't have anything else, which I think is an incredibly fast shrinking market, which is like I think it will basically non-existent in about 5 years. And the other point is safety. Or even to another degree security, which is what happens when people are incentivized to buy accessories from other brands because those brands offer stuff cheaper than Apple does it. We have heard stories of like people getting like burns from using non-authorized chargers on, not even just on iPhones, by the way. This was like 7 to 10 years ago, I don't fully remember, and it was happening while people still had chargers and cables in the box. So this was always going to happen to a degree. However, we don't see it actually increasing because over the last 10 years, I would actually say that the average standard for chargers and cables has drastically improved, and it's very easy to get for very cheap something that is probably not great, probably not super designed for longevity, but definitely not that it will break and catch fire the way like super cheap Chinese accessories might have done like even 10 or 12 years ago. You get like the Amazon basic stuff, and even if you like, I know it's relatively a lot of money to maybe some people, but you can get like a premium cable from the likes of Anker, Aoki, and other brands like that, and those brands offer pretty long warranty. You can sue the freaking hell out of some of them if something really goes wrong. And the other point is also that there is some just trust associated with it. Again, doesn't mean that everything will be perfect forever, but the fact that it could result in like actual physical harm is unlikely. So with the potential support for Thunderbolt, and with me outlining basically my moral beliefs in what accessories should be included, let's talk about an accessory that definitely is optional, because by no means do I believe that this accessory will ship. Now, it is not impossible, right? It could be that what we have seen thus far are cables designed for the base iPhone 15 and 15 Plus, and that Thunderbolt would be shipped with the iPhone Pros. But given that no Mac has ever shipped by default with like Thunderbolt, because costs and stuff like that, I definitely think that this will be an optional accessory. Origin, I think it's because where I live, that's why my perspective is different, but my country is a very small minority in purchasing. Origin, like, could you repeat where you're from? I forgot. I remember it's like a smaller like country, like we're definitely like financially less well off than a lot of Europe and stuff like that. This is, by the way, why I'm saying like all markets can have different demands, and with different demands, I would also argue comes a potentially different perspective. Let's also be honest, Origin. It's very likely that in a poorer, smaller country, people are less going with the iPhone Pro anyway, and going with like you're from Ghana. Okay, Ghana is definitely different. It's I think like Nigeria, for example, or in South Africa have like much stronger economies than Ghana, right? I don't know that much about Africa. I've read up a lot recently with like the situation in Niger, but so I definitely understand that your perspective here is different. Also, big shout out for listening to a freaking like dude in Germany talking in English from Ghana. Like that's so freaking base that the world is so interconnected, isn't it, nowadays? Even though with all the problems, of course, still like neo-colonialism and shit like that. So what is this accessory? Well, it is supposedly 0.8 meters. It's pretty thick. It's still braided. It is shorter than what we currently have, which is 1.8 and 3 meters. It says here in the article that it's supposedly 150 watts, but when we actually go to like some other stuff, like data transferring cable for iPhone 15 Pro, which sold separately, up to 120 watts charged, features USB 4 Gen 2, length 0.8 meter, different than existing Thunderbolt one. So it might not be fully like finalized what we see here, but it seems to be like the length is reliable, and USB 4 Gen 2, yes, that would like line up with like Thunderbolt speeds, but by default Thunderbolt also has like some other considerations. Like Thunderbolt also has like requirements for how much charge a device can put out for accessories, so I don't know if like an iPhone with its relatively small battery could manage that. So I'm definitely not betting on it, right, that it would be officially Thunderbolt, but it could be like USB 4 with like very decent speeds. So what else is it saying? So the speeds. So, however, the leaked USB 4 cable is based on the Thunderbolt 4 protocol, allowing it to offer equivalent speeds of 40 gigabits per second. or twice the preceding USB 3.2 Gen 2 standard. As for the 150 watt charging claim, not 120 watt. Oh, so that's a correction. Okay, 150 watts. Yeah, that would be a pretty base cable. It's interesting that it would be rated for 150 watts and not like 140, because 140 is the more standardized speed with like the latest power delivery 3.1. Though obviously a little overhead could also just mean that it's like 140 watts at like maximum efficiency, but then like 150 watts, like the cable could get a little hot and stuff like that. It's all a give and take, and I doubt that any of this is like very well tuned for the iPhone specifically. Right, like the fastest, like regardless of what we're going to see, the iPhone will not charge at, oh my god, I hate everything about how Twitter works. So the iPhone definitely will not charge at 120 watts. It will not charge at 100 watts. It will not charge at 80 watts. It will not even charge at 60 watts. So this idea that it definitely doesn't like bother me at what speeds this cable supports. However, this cable kind of sounds based for like the latest MacBooks, so that it could potentially output like not just the current MacBooks we have, but like potential M3 ones that we're going to get, that we can also get a lot of fast charging, not just through MagSafe, but now also like through USB-C. That's really great, especially if Apple also manages that all ports on all sides from the iPhone charge at full speed. So this is basically the situation here, right? So let me summarize it very quickly. It's not very difficult, but I think it does definitely create some area for discussion. So just for context, let's just look at what, and thank you Mac Rumors for this, by the way, because I wanted to do this myself and they happened to do so, which is what speeds are we comparing it to? Now, all current Macs support Thunderbolt, which goes up to 40 gigabits per second. Interestingly, it's 40 gigabits in both directions, so it supports like 40 up, 40 down, which is fantastic. The iPad Pro, the 2021 M1 and 2022 M2 version also have Thunderbolt. It should be said that this is Thunderbolt 3/4 speeds. iPad Pro, the reason why, by the way, sometimes we cannot say like Thunderbolt 4 is because technically Thunderbolt 4 requires to have at least the support for 2 external monitors, and as you know, the non-Pro and non-Max M1 chips and M2 chips only support 1 external screen. So this is why Apple calls it just Thunderbolt and not Thunderbolt 4. The actual throughput speeds and charging speeds are really, really good, and they do match the standard. It's just that with how much display bandwidth basically the chips have, Apple does not feed that to Thunderbolt on the non-Pro and non-Max devices, or at least not to several screens at once. Then older iPads, iPad Pros got like 10 gigabit speeds, and the latest iPad Air has 10 gigabits. Before that, the iPad Air had 5 gigabits, as does the current iPad Mini, which I think makes sense. And the iPad 2022, which is iPad 10th gen, is USB 2, which is why I hate the freaking 10th gen iPad. I know it's like a cheaper version, but I think what Apple should have simply done is given the iPad Air double the base storage, then the price difference would be far less pronounced, and then people could just do all the other stuff. It's like, wait, the iPad Air, yeah, yeah, the iPad Air with the M1 chip does not have Thunderbolt. That's interesting. I forgot that for some reason. So, and what we're expected to see, which would be like the iPhone 15 Plus and iPhone 15, they would be USB 2.0. Again, charging speeds do depend on the device. The support of the actual port is secondary here. We are talking about data transfers. So USB 2.0 for 80 mbits. Again, I don't like that. I think that 5 gigabits should be the new minimum. But again, I do understand where they're doing it. And this is the aspect where I'm saying that this is nickel and diming. Origin Unknown, wish you a good trip to the grocery store. Very happy that you decide to keep me still in your ear. And then the Pros would support USB 3.2 or Thunderbolt, which would either be 20 or 40 gigabits per second. Again, it could still be USB 4, which would be 40 gigabits per second. Just not getting the full certification for Thunderbolt, even though Apple has actually been really aggressive in like getting Thunderbolt certification. Oh, sorry, I now forgot to mute myself while drinking, but at least that's what's just one one sip. So so now, this is the context of basically the devices, which, I mean, you have to consider, like, iPhones definitely do have to consider stuff like how large they are, how hot they get, right? The iPads and Macs definitely have an advantage there. However, given how cheap the iPad mini, how cheap the regular iPad is, and how small the iPad mini is, I think there is no excuse to not give the iPhone 15 and 15 Plus at the very least the same capabilities as the iPad mini. So this is my main criticism here. I think USB 2.0 is a bad thing to put into modern device cables. I think at the very least it should be USB 3.1 Gen 1, however you want to like do the concrete nomenclature. I think charging speeds, again, 60 watts is supposedly 20 volts and volts. Why can I not pronounce it correctly? Like, it's 60 watts current with what we've seen with the cable. I think that's perfectly fine, because it would be essentially like almost double the peak charging speeds of what those devices support. And even if you like at some point used like the iPhone cable with like those with a Mac or an iPad. Now an iPad would still charge at full speed, but the Mac that even supported like 100 watts would still very likely charge through it and not lose battery percentage even while doing pretty intensive stuff. The only exception probably would be like the 16-inch version, which can be a little power hungry if you get like the mini LED screen to be like super bright across the entire panel and stuff like that. So yeah, that's basically it. I've outlined where like my opinions can be a little bit hot takey, and where some people might simply disagree, where some people could say that I'm basically like a mindless Apple sheep here, that is like accepting whatever whatever Apple feeds me. That is not the case though. The reason why I want to cover it this way is, for one, because I actually do agree with, at its core, the idea of shipping less while focusing on the main product that you are actually selling to a consumer. So for example, not including a charger is completely fine, and whenever people bring that up, whenever we talk about accessories, I get annoyed. Shipping a longer cable actually kind of goes against that. So 1.6 meters, However, the counter argument here that I would make is that a longer braided cable could actually be more beneficial. I am speculating here, but the argument I could see is that people still like to use their phones while charging, and while using a non-braided cable while charging will just like will destroy it over time pretty quickly. And the shorter cable is obviously the more you're likely to just tug on it and lead to the destruction earlier. This is, by the way, why I have 3-meter cables for almost everything for myself, because those cables last the freaking longest. They're braided, they're super thick, they're super reliable, and I never have to tug on them. The only thing that, and I never like destroy them like I do non-braided cables, basically like pushing them all together into a giant mess. Yeah, I think that you could make the argument that a longer, thicker braided cable could be environmentally more conscious than a shorter, thinner, non-braided one, because it will just survive that much longer. But again, I don't have as long as cables are still needed, it's not like I will be an absolutist about whether we need like short or long cables. The one thing that I hate are like 30 centimeter cables, which of course they would be the cheapest and like the least environmentally impactful ones. The only difference I would say is that they're so likely to then be lost, or people would then run out and get like other cables, that they're basically worse for the environment, because they will lead to an extra cable sale, even if those are by themselves decent cables. Being super short is bad in that case. We stand short kings here on this channel, but not super short cables. It's interesting because I know it's a topic that it's difficult to cover it in a way that encourages people to be nuanced. It's difficult to cover it in a way where I will not be like clipped and like reduced in my opinion to the most basic interpretation of like an apple sheep. But I do stand by what I say, and I do hope that the people listening to what I'm saying understand that I do have certain convictions that might not line up with everybody else's. Like for example, I have never cared that much about like Apple's packaging and stuff like that. I like a lot of clean packaging. I like a lot of like somewhat beautiful packaging. But whenever like I bought into Apple at the time when Apple was didn't make those like giant boxes anymore, right? Like the Simpsons joke where Lisa opens up like an Apple box and there's like another box inside, and then only 10% of it is like filled, and like 90% of what you get is like a manual and stuff like that. I never liked that. It never appealed to me. I am absolutely a minimalist in that regard. I do like getting extra stuff, sure, but I've also found over the years that this desire has gotten less and less as I have overthought my ideas about consumerism, about environmentalism, and also to be perfectly frank, is a lot of the accessories that you get are not necessarily what most of us truly need. Like, for example, it was like super nice that the original iPhone shipped like with a charging dock, and it definitely looked pretty. And Apple, I believe, still keeps selling like a lightning charging dock. I hate the idea of plugging my phone into like an exposed like the end of a cable, basically like the male part connector. I always am afraid of how is it wobbling or not. This is why I've tried it once, never again. So, but imagine if we kept getting it because people were saying, oh, but like if Apple stopped giving it to us, then that would be like lower value and stuff like that. No, calm the fuck down. Not all of you need all of it. And for example, like I personally would prefer for Apple not to ship USB-C, but to ship MagSafe, because I personally prefer MagSafe over charging through like a direct connection. However, this now goes against certain laws, so screw me, I guess, in that regard. And the other point is that Apple simply does not make the MagSafe cable that I want. The MagSafe cable that I always wanted and the one that I got was the Belkin one, which is 2 meters long. It's braided and it has a small kickstand, so I can prop it up while I charge my phone. The advantage of MagSafe over USB-C, obviously USB-C has its other advantages like data throughputs, which MagSafe doesn't, but MagSafe has no orientation. You can just plug it on the back. It doesn't matter if you're gaming in portrait mode, whether the port is looking left or right, whether you then have it back in like landscape or however you want to play or use your phone. MagSafe will be more supportive of that, and that to me is much more user friendly. However, that would also now go against laws, and people would now be complaining why a phone that is transferring from Lightning to USB-C now doesn't ship with an appropriate cable. So again, it's all a give and take, and Apple does not always make what I want to have, and this is why I support having a robust third-party ecosystem. Part of what makes me happy is apparently that there is no made for iPhone chip inside the new cables, so it seems definitely like charging speeds will not be limited by made for I requirements. However, we cannot say the same about potentially data transfer speeds, because if this is simply a USB 2.0 cable, it wouldn't need a made for I chip, because it simply wouldn't be capable of transferring higher speeds anyway. And then the question would be, would you need a made for I chip inside the cable for just Thunderbolt? Would you need it for any kinds of speeds about USB 2.0. This is one thing where I will very, very strongly criticize Apple, because I don't think that you would need it. If Apple requires like a Thunderbolt chip, basically, I am fine for Thunderbolt. Because Thunderbolt cables by themselves are very, very specific kind of accessory for people with very specific needs. But I think limiting people out of buying just regular USB-C cable that supports 5 or 10 gigabits throughput speeds would be scummy. And this is where I get back to, I don't think that Apple should be shipping USB 2.0 cables anyway. I think they should be shipping like USB 3 cables, either 5 or 10 gigabits, and then for a more enthusiast crowd, they could sell you a much thicker, much more robust Thunderbolt cable, which would allow them to get more money from a professional kind of segment. It would not hurt the regular community, which would be fine with 10 gigabits per second, even 5. And if they don't limit speeds for other accessories that are below Thunderbolt speeds, that would be just the open pro-consumer thing to do. And I'm actually like wildly like moving my heads around, because I am very passionate about that. I am pro-consumer. I am pro-consumer rights. It's just that I don't think consumer rights includes like an entitlement to get a very specific kind of cable with every purchase, or having a charger with every device included. I think that creates a lot of garbage. I think that creates, and I literally mean garbage. I don't mean that the individual products are bad, but I do mean that it creates a lot of e-waste. Because at some point people just lose shit breaks, and people start piling up on new ones and then forget the older ones. Like I have 7 5-watt chargers, which you could say, oh, you don't use them because they are 5-watt chargers. That is not necessarily true. I have plenty of devices that don't need much more than 5 watts. My AirPods, for example, my my controllers and stuff like that. However, they're 5 watts, they're USB A. They don't, like, they just don't appeal to me in this context, because what if I could just have a USB-C? For one, I don't have USB-A to anything cables that I use regularly anymore, but I would gladly get like a charger that has like 3 USB-C ports and potentially 1 USB-A port if like a friend comes over, that they would still have something they could plug in. So again, this is why I'm trying to stay nuanced. I have my own particular views. I have my own particular views about what should be there, and as I've said, I am criticizing Apple here if it's not USB 3, which it doesn't seem to be. However, in comparison to what we have now, which is a USB-C to Lightning cable, so it's far less versatile. It's a 1 meter cable, so it's shorter. It's non-braided and less robust in build. We are getting an upgrade regardless. And an upgrade is always better than a downgrade. I know some people consider it like not getting a charger anymore, a downgrade. I think it's more like a side grade with certain like environmental considerations. For everything else, I just encourage people to just stay calm. Really think of what you need. Potentially, like, I see like people potentially like running out and getting themselves Thunderbolt cables because they think that they need them and they will then use them once. This is why I'm saying it would be way better if Apple shipped USB 3.0 cables, because I think that would keep a lot of the non-enthusiasts very, very happy for a very long period of time. While Thunderbolt will keep even enthusiasts happy for a very long period of time, but I don't want anybody who doesn't need Thunderbolt to run out and get Thunderbolt. And I also don't want resources to be wasted to ship Thunderbolt to people who would never ever utilize it. So there's an utilitarian argument here that, again, we are not hurt by getting better accessories. It's just that we live in a world with finite resources, and there are other considerations. Like, you just saw the Thunderbolt cable, which at half length is like double the thickness. This is a considerable change to the to just what the accessory would look, feel like, how it would work in like regular environments. It wouldn't like even fold that well as this one does. It could potentially break if people try to fold it that aggressively, because it's that much thicker. It wouldn't react kindly to that. So it's all nuanced. I definitely hope that it all turns out somewhat for the best. That maybe the pros actually come with faster cables out of the gate. Maybe that Apple in a year or two will reconsider their stance on USB 2.0 in general, and that the non-pro iPhones start shipping with at least USB 3.2 speeds, or like 5 or 10 gigabits. I think Thunderbolt would be limited to the pros if we get Thunderbolt anyway. That should also be said. So this is just something that I really wanted to cover, because I know that my opinions won't be popular, and I think it's very important for the people who choose to support me to still know all my hot takes, because over the years you will find out anyway, so why should I hide it? I'm very grateful for Origin and Unknown here for joining me. I apologize that I've already gotten like 2 DMs on Twitter that like people cannot be joining because it's an atrocious time for them. So I'm fine. I'm definitely will try to look up which times are the best for my community. I've tried making a poll, but that was when we had far fewer supporters, and I would love to get like the option to do a poll on YouTube, but I need like 500 subs for that. So please, if you haven't subscribed already, please subscribe so we can actually do it, because on Twitter it's a mess. Like, I also cannot like filter Twitter for like people who actually watch my channel. So this was a little bit of a shorter stream. For everything that I'm seeing is that the WAN show doesn't seem to be happening today, right? Like, I'm looking at like live stuff. It doesn't look like the WAN show is happening. When I go to Twitter and I look at Linus, both like Linus Tech Tips and like his own account, there's nothing new here. Could it be that they're actually taking off this entire week? That would be kind of insane. I mean, it's not like I'm against time for introspection, but I didn't really expect it. So that's definitely a very, very interesting like turn of events to think that like Linus would not be doing any content potentially this week. I definitely want to react to some drama stuff. It is very fun. It definitely attracts a wider amount of people. Once again, I've set my part here. I also would like just really say that how much I love the idea of like a titanium iPhone. We even have like I don't know if it's like what's like a 9 to 5 Mac. Or if it was on Mac Rumors. Oh, here for one, the colors, right? So this would be silver and like silver titanium and the white one, the natural like Titan gray titanium, and then like the corresponding gray glass, a space black color with the appropriately black glass on the back, and then a blue titanium finish with a corresponding blue matte glass finish. Oh, Origin, you're saying they announced it? Yeah, I know that they announced it for like last week that there wouldn't be a WAN show, but I have seen nothing about this week. So this is by the way why I didn't plan to do a stream for this anyway. But I am kind of surprised. This is what I'm saying, right? It's kind of like I'm sure sometimes you're shocked but not surprised. In this case, I'm a little bit of both. And just in general, like getting cool colors here for the new iPhone, getting color match cables, but there was like an interesting article that I found. No, that's not how. Where was it? I cannot find it. Okay, so those are supposedly like the other colors. So I assume. Oh yes, this is the image, by the way, that I was also wanting to show. Leaked iPhone 15 color match USB-C cables. So yeah, this is a salmon one. This would be like blue, then white, yellow, and black. So it seems like everything that we've seen thus far would be like would be like cables for the non-Pro iPhone. So that could explain potentially some disparity if there might be a different like cable variant for the pros. But again, I'm not actually like betting on it. And I assume that like the black and the white ones would be pretty easy to reuse for like the silver models and like the space black models. So I'm not saying that like I think those are very likely to be reused. Then those are the more colorful ones, and then I assume we could be getting like a darker blue tone, unless this also happens to be the same blue tone of the titanium model, but I don't think it does. So yeah, this is like the current lineup. And we would be getting like midnight black, starlight, yellow, blue, and orange / coral pink. Okay, so coral pink is what I decided to call salmon. I apologize if that is super wrong. I'm looking for something that I'm sorry. It was like there was like a weight expectations for like titanium iPhones. Did I imagine it? It was on either Mac Rumors or 9 to 5 Mac. iPhone weight titanium. This is basically like my closing thought here. How much lighter? Yes, this was 95 Mac, so I was a little wrong by scrolling more through Mac Rumors, which is how much lighter will titanium be versus stainless steel? So those are weight predictions, which is currently based on like the iPhone 14, 14 Plus are like 6.07 and 7.16 ounces. The predictions here are not for the regular 15 and 15 Plus. Those will just vary based on the battery capacity. And then we have like the current 14 Pro and 14 Pro Max. For me, it's just lighter to like evaluate them in grams: 206 grams, 240 grams, and then the iPhone 15 Pro and Pro Max would then be respectively 191 and 221 grams. So this would be a reduction of by 15 grams, and this would be a reduction of 19 grams. Obviously, percentage wise appropriate to like the device size. My theory is that Apple could be targeting about the same weight, right, by reducing the weight of the chassis, and but then giving it a larger battery, that we would be getting about the same weight, maybe like a small reduction to like 230 or even like just 235, and then here reduction to maybe just a full 200 grams, because I think 200 grams is just, it's pretty comfortable to hold. I don't think that you need to like downgrade all the way to like 191. It's not a downgrade, but you know what I mean, right? So this was very interesting. I think the colors here are secondary, but they are an interesting part of the overall puzzle that we are now seeing. And we are now like 3 weeks away, like until we're seeing the new iPhone, like 2.5 weeks actually, potentially, if the rumors of an September 12th event is true. So it's not a lot to cover at this point, but I really wanted to cover this, and I'm very happy and grateful to anybody who joined. This is not controversial to me, because it's still an improvement on what we currently have. But obviously, as consumers, I'm always fine with people discussing things being even better, right? It's arguable that we need something even better and even a lot better than USB 2.0 cables. I'm just encouraging people to then not go overboard and suddenly demand Thunderbolt cables, which is not going to happen, because this simply does not help with sales, or start to argue for like bringing back chargers, which again is also never going to happen. Like iPhone sales have been improving, or like even just like standing still, despite like an overall drop in demand for the rest of the industry, despite having no charger. And even while the iPhone didn't have USB-C, didn't have Thunderbolt support, and had like a super flimsy, cheap short cable. So having improvements on that is definitely welcome. Richie, I just found this while watching a different video. Do you mean you are new here to the channel? Because I'm always glad for new supporters. It's just that you're joining us a little late. Maybe you would be interested in like rewatching this video, or going basically through my backlog of content to see if you like the channel. I understand that sometimes the YouTube algorithm like works in mysterious ways. It seems like YouTube is like really harsh on like live streams in general. Recently, I've heard that not just for myself, but like some other smaller creators that I think they've had like a big push to like combat Twitch, but they seem to be like cooling off on that front. So even like a lot of people that I've gained here, as long as I'm really not covering like basically the same drama topic that people joined the channel for originally, YouTube really will not like give my streams a lot of like attention, which again, I'm fine with that. I have 150 subs. I know that on YouTube this basically doesn't register, but I really wanted to just to contextualize why sometimes we'll have a lot of people in the chat, sometimes less so. Sometimes we'll have like more people watching an hour in, and when I'm almost wrapping up, then when we're watching when I was actually doing shit and actually talking about the topic. So Rich Riggy I'm maybe you can also think of becoming a subscriber, a supporter. I would very much welcome that. Yeah, and at the peak of viewership, because apparently that's what happens. By the way, I now understand more and more how live streams work, which like there's a reason why my 4 hour streams did the best out of any stream, because you pick up new viewers, the algorithm recognizes that people are actually watching you. I definitely don't want to then unnerve you, because I could do this in like my podcast where I put a lot of topics into, but I definitely also want to do like standalone videos on a certain topic, because we ended up talking for an hour and 15 minutes just about like cables and iPhone colors. And while sure I could have cut it into a 10-minute video, that's not how I like to interact with you guys. So if you really like the kind of like free flow discussion that we have here, I really appreciate any like, any comment, any chat message, and of course any subscription. You can of course also support me on Patreon. I'm always mentioning that we now have more people watching, which is such a shame that it's happening while I'm going offline. Guys, anybody in the chat, do you have like a big topic you think is worth covering? I could have some extra time, but if we don't have much to talk about, I don't want to unnecessarily extend this. Yeah, it seems like we don't have. Though I know that we're working with a delay, like between like my words and basically the chat. So I will look out for what might still be coming. So yeah, it seems like basically I encourage people to like rewatch the video. If you're joining now, you can always check out the VOD afterwards. I do leave my YouTube videos completely unedited so that you can get a good feel of how they actually work. Origin, how about the spicy one on Android versus iOS? I will actually definitely be doing that, probably around the time when Android 14 will come out. I also would like to do something like macOS versus Windows. It's just that for this, I definitely would need more time than I currently am able to put into this. I also have to get up pretty early today. It's now 2 a.m. So yeah, I am wrapping it up now. I apologize for having delayed all of you a little bit right now, but I think it's just valuable to ask for input, and whenever you have input, I think I have shown myself very receptive to it, or at least be able to comment on suggestions, right? Not just in saying, oh, I'm not doing this, but like saying, oh, this might come at a later time, or I need more data, so stuff like that. So this is basically it, ladies and gentlemen. I've had a little more energy than I thought I might have. I'm a little tired, and I think most of you also are now pretty tired, knowing the time zones you're watching me from. I very greatly support all you, very greatly appreciate all your support. I hope you were at least mildly interested in this topic and maybe my very specific takes on it. I like to leave some spicy takes online that I still am very committed to, and this definitely is one of them, because I know a lot of people will disagree. So this was Mark Tech. Thank you guys so much for watching, and this is Mark Tech tuning out.